Hey, what's up, guys? You are back with your Driven Women Unfiltered podcast, powered by Adapting Social. So we are really coming down to the end of 2023, and we couldn't let this year pass without having our very special guest, Ann Pennington, Mrs. USA Earth.
Yes.
And you're actually handing over your title.
I am. The countdown is 32 days starting today.
Oh.
Like, not that I have a stopwatch, but it's coming to an end.
Amazing. But Ann is also a CEO, an amazing styling company. So Eye for Style owns and operates, and I've had the pleasure of attending one of her amazing fashion shows. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So wonderful to see you. I love you, adore both of you. So it's great to be here.
Well, you know what is so funny for anybody who doesn't know us would know this, but people thought we were sisters because
you guys are like fucking clones.
I would be honored to be.
And I mean that in a great way. It's just I walked in and I was like,
Yes.
See, but you're taller than me. How tall are you?
Almost 5'11". How tall are you?
Oh yeah. Listen, I tell people.
do you also never wear shoes under 6 inches because that's this bitch?
You do wear heels a lot.
I do. I look like
an Amazon all the time.
like pretty sure people think I'm like a drag queen from behind. Like, they're like, oh, never mind. Yeah.
Sometimes I have to watch my contour because I think the same thing.
I used to live in Asia, and I would wear my giant heels like in the middle.
Oh, that
like,
is so foreign over there.
Like the downtown, and literally people would be like, yeah, who is that? Is she or he? You know, and I was like, I'm whatever, right? Like, it's good.
Taller than most men over there too.
Predominantly, yes. And then of course I rock a Louboutin. You know,
Yeah.
I gotta love a good heel.
Yeah. Well, so Ann's from Rumson now, but you come from South Africa.
So no, I wish I came from South Africa, but no, I'm an international worldwide traveler. My mother was European, and immigrated to the States many, many moons ago. And coming with that, we had the opportunity to travel, having family all over. I lived abroad for many years as a child. I studied and lived in Asia for many, many years before I moved back to the US and ended up in New York. And then New York became a Rumsonite, New Jerseyan. So bounced all over the world. There are only 2 continents I have not been to. Yes, so.
That's amazing.
I have so many questions. So you were in Asia. Were you speaking a different language?
So I had to go to school, and predominantly everybody spoke Chinese. And everyone, firstly, Hong Kong is like Americanized, it's very westernized. Everyone speaks English, but in school, they felt more comfortable speaking, of course, like their language. So why would I have to, why should they accommodate me when I should be able to accommodate them? So it was really interesting. I made friends because I felt left out, right? You're sitting there, you're hearing people, they're looking at you, and you're the only person who looks different. Doesn't speak the language. And so eventually I started switching words I'll give you an English word, you give me a Chinese word. And when I was really young, I used to do that with Spanish. I used to tutor children in the ESL language. So after school, I would do that for Spanish children and teach English as a second language. So I was like, I almost felt like I was doing it again in Chinese. And then most of my friends, what was really funny is I became friends with all the locals. So we did everything together, sat together, ate traditional food, went to their families. Like, I felt like I was
like immersed in everything.
Very much. Like, I almost, when I moved back to the States, I felt reverse culture shock. I was like, I don't want to come back here. Like, Americans are rude.
Yeah.
So it was, I was like,
you can say that
I also
again.
like that your like entrepreneurial mindset started with like bartering for words.
Yeah.
When you were like a student
nobody
in
wants
another
to be left
country.
out.
That's awesome.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're talking shit about me.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me figure this out. And I was like, oh, so I learned all the bad words first, obviously.
Yeah.
And and so you learned, if you wanted something, you got better prices if you could speak a little Chinese.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's funny. It's like sometimes I review my words because it's been a long while since I lived there. Yeah.
Okay, since you are my long lost sister, I need to hear about this love story of yours because you just celebrated
almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been with my husband 20 years, married for I feel like 100. It's interesting because I would guess I'm from Las Vegas originally. So what happens in Vegas usually stays in Vegas. Nothing ever. Well, my husband married what happened in Vegas, right? So we met, and I'll set the story really nicely. There is a nightclub in the Caesars Palace, and it still exists. It's a different name now. I don't know what it is. It's a really cool rooftop nightclub. I was working for Dolby. I used to be one of their promotional speakers, and I worked for them for a couple years. And he's in IT. He came in with partying. There's all these geeks that look like, your traditional IT. No offense to anybody. But uniforms, it was like the khaki pants and the white shirt from the like convention trade show.
Maybe had a name
Yeah.
tag or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Like, hi, I'm, so-and-so company. And the sunset is beautiful. You can see like the Vegas Strip. I'm with all my girlfriends and we're just like there. And before you know it, my husband walks in, it's like James Bond. Like everything stops. And it was like a film scene. He's like walking and I was like, okay.
Slow-mo.
I was like, he had like the shirt buttoned down, the black blazer. I was like, okay.
That's not an IT guy.
No, I was like, he must be like lost. So of course, like I was like, hello, hi, I'm Ann. No, and so before you know it, we talked the whole night. He had an English accent. I was like, oh my gosh. It was like love at first sight. We talked on the phone for like a year before we actually like saw each other. Every single day for like 14 hours a day.
Oh, I love that.
We talked on the phone. And this is before we didn't have like smartphones. I'm not
Yeah.
old, but it was like you just didn't have that technology yet. So eventually we just would talk and talk and talk and talk. So I literally married my best friend. Yeah.
I love
so
that.
he has a brother, but he's married, so we'll find you someone else.
So what I loved about your husband was that he was so supportive. Like at that one event that I was at, he came out and he was like managing the show. It was
Yes.
like he put her up
Clipboard
on a
like
pedestal
just,
to allow her to shine and do what she was supposed to be doing. And he managed everything out. I mean, he was sweating and running, and
yes.
I swore somebody got me on tape because I was like, I need one like that.
Yes, I'm so lucky because I feel like in anything, a partnership, it's really just marriage is about equal, right? It's like standing next to each other. No one's ever, and even if you want the person to be in front of you and like support them while you're behind, that's what you do. You take turns.
Yep.
I would say we take turns to like, but he always helps me shine. Like I always get emotional because he's just such a great person, and I feel so grateful, right? It's hard to. We've all dated our frogs before you find your Prince Charming.
Yeah, yep.
But no, he really wants to see like my full potential.
I love this for you, honestly. I mean, it's so like even to see you get emotional about it that's how you should talk about your spouse,
And
right?
you know what though too? I find that when we have guests just like you, Anne, that are like doing big shit and they talk about their significant other,
so proud.
it's always like not that like your story isn't special, but it's always like the same thing. Like he's a partner, he supports the hell out of everything I do. Like he's never like, why are you gonna do that? Or like that idea is too big. Like the man is always like,
Totally.
lockstep.
100%, because I feel like you get one life, one go round, and like why would you do it with anybody else who didn't want to see your you shine the brightest you can shine. Like that just makes me sad. And my mom had that with my father. My dad was such a stellar human being. Just a real like tough John Wayne kind of like let's make shit happen. And they took over. They both were. My mother was from World War II. She escaped all that stuff, and my father was a Depression child. And they built an empire together, just like one stone after the other. And I was like, so it was modeled the behavior of my family.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky because, believe me, not every guy I dated was, stellar. Like some of them, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to find our father. And we get there eventually, but I love that story, and I love that you say like your parents built an empire together because that's like the goal, right?
It is. It's like you watch hardworking people, and it really is what you put in is what you get out.
Do you think that watching your parents, not just their relationship as a couple, but like watching their hard work, like instilled those values in you and like that kind of mindset?
I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
So I'm the last of 10 children.
10.
I make number 10.
Oh God.
And so there was no time for
Holy.
slack. You worked hard. You put in your effort to live in the house. Everyone played a role.
Wow.
And my father was
God
like
bless.
very militant. Like if he called your name, you were scared.
Yeah.
And he owned a bunch of businesses, and in the end, my father owned a big transportation company, but he said, every one of my children has to show up and go to work. Like, I don't care if you want to or don't want to, you have to work. So nothing was handed to us. And I have a lot of people talk about this, but he really taught me financial literacy at a young age,
Yep.
Yeah.
which I don't think a lot of children, have this opportunity.
definitely
And
not.
especially for women, we're taught to like get married and like play that role and whatnot. But he was like, if you want something, you can have anything you want. And he wasn't something like this big dream. Like he was like, no, it's legitimately like I had one truck, I had one this, and now I have like hundreds of across the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it is possible because no one gave him a dime.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I love a good come up story like that.
Yeah, I sure do.
mean,
I sure do.
Listen, I'm sure there's so much to be said too, just about like the dynamic of being in a home with that many siblings, but like the fact that
I was going to say
he ran a
baby.
tight ship. He was like, all right, this is how we're
What
getting
is
stuff
that
done.
like as the baby? How many bathrooms did you guys have?
So it's funny. I just
Of course,
was
that's
told,
what you would ask.
I know. Well, of course, right? You're like, let's see if we can still sell the house. No, I was just home just recently, and I drove past my child home. And I drove past being like, it looks really small.
Always looks
Why?
small when we're older.
I was like-
because it's so like impressionable when we're small. Like everything looks so grand.
Even for you 6 foot tall.
Yeah, no, like
I was like, I felt like I could like hopped over it. I was
Yeah.
like, what happened to this mansion I grew up in? I was
And you're like, there was 12 of us in here? Like,
I was like, no
ow.
way. And there was a big age spread. So randomly, we weren't all there together. A lot of them had already gone to school. I mean, they're like 40 years older than I am practically. And not 40, like 30. But so you have this huge gap of
Yeah.
people. So they're gone, had families already. And then I was only raised really with a couple, like 4 or 5 of them. So my sister, I have an Irish twin, and then the rest were kind of staggered between going to college and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, but when everyone was together, my parents actually ran out. They would rent function rooms, like at hotels and things, to have us all together. Because they had to just either stagger the times of people visiting for holidays.
Yeah.
And then my dad's I wasn't home for it, I was in Hong Kong, but for his 80th birthday, they actually rented a park and hired a drone to take pictures because you couldn't take an actual photo because there's that many extended family. My parents have like, I don't know, like 32 grandkids or so. It's something banana town.
Yeah.
Like my father had passed away 2 years ago, almost 3, excuse me, and I'd never been to a funeral that felt like a function.
Yeah.
Because there was just so many family members. Like all they do is procreate in my family. I don't know. It's like, let's just keep this gene going. I was like, ah.
But you only have one child.
I have one. I was blessed with one, thank God. And I would love to have more, but that's what God gave me. And you know, he's my angel. Love him to death. But my mom said, this is funny, when he was really little, she said, if I had had him first, he would have been my last one. Because he has good energy. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, Mom, that's all kids are like. She's like, no, not mine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, all right, you were in Vegas and you came to New Jersey.
So I met James Bond, and I ended up in Asia. So went to Asia, started working, went to school there. We got married. We lived there for many moons, and then I fell pregnant with my son, and we came to New York. I gave birth to my son, planning to go back to Asia, which we ended up, meeting friends, getting your roots, and just finding the love of like the East Coast, and we just stayed. And then before you know it, we had someone say, hey, come to Jersey, come to the Jersey Shore and like see my house. Like she would ask me every weekend. I was like, what is with her, this Jersey Shore thing? I was like, stop with like, I can't, because I used to watch the show. And I was like, I'm not going to New Jersey. So as stupid as it sounds, I know like how ignorant and like uneducated, but I was like, I'm good. I don't need to, we were like, go to the Hamptons and whatever. So this girl was like, come on, my house is beautiful. I'm like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Finally, we sucked it up, got in the car, drove to Spring Lake, and I showed up on her.
Good spot.
Phenomenal. I was like, holy moly. Like, why did I not know this existed? I felt like I was like in a movie. It was beautiful, like manicured lawns and this, that, the other. So before you know it, we spent the weekend there, walking around, just enjoying Spring Lake. And I'm like, you know what? We need a house here. So we rented that summer, fell in love with it, and immediately bought a home. And I was like, this is like the dream. And they're like, yeah, that's why we don't talk about it. We make it look like New Jersey's bad because we don't want everybody here. I was like, now I get it. Like it has the most pristine beaches, the nicest people. And during COVID, when the world started ending, we lived in New York City. We ended up buying a house right before the world ended. We had no idea. So we went to Rumson, went to an open house. I walked in. It had all the bone structure. I grew up in on a horse ranch. So it's an old horse carriage, like where they drive the carriages in. Fell in love with the house. I was like, this is meant for me. Put an offer, and then before you know, like 48 hours, like, and by the way, you have this house now. I was like, oh shit, now the world is like, we're dying, and what's happening? I don't even know anymore. But it presented such a silver lining, and I have a wonderful community. My son had a pool. We were so fortunate to become part. I was already doing charity work in the community, so it really aligned everything I wanted to do together.
So when did you start pageantry?
As an adult. So most people are like, oh, you've done all these pageants, you've won all these national titles, you must have been doing it since you were born. And I was like, actually, my mom does not like pageantry. She's like, women should have PhDs and not crowns. So
okay, Mom.
Yeah, Mom's like, no, we do other things. And I was like, but I really want to try this. And I met a woman I used to model, and she was like, you would be perfect for this, you should try it. And I was like, okay. And I showed up and I was like, oh, okay, won. It was amazing, loved it. Won another one. I was like, oh, this is really fun. And then I moved away and stopped. I was like, no more for me. When I moved back to the East Coast, I met my non-for-profit is styled with a purpose. So met some pageant girls, and they were like, I don't have really like any money to buy a dress. I don't have money to like makeup and hair and all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? Let's put something together for you. let's do a fundraiser because you're doing all this amazing community work, right? And the other part of pageantry is not just being beautiful and all this other stuff, it's really what you're doing. And I said, you're amazing, let me help you get there. So we started sponsoring some pageants. Before you know it, they were like, Miss Ann, you should do a pageant. And I was like, oh, no. Before you know it, I got talked into it. Did another one. I've done like 6 in the last like 6 years. So
Just killing it.
Well, no, it was just fun. I think when you enjoy something,
Yeah.
it just shines through, right? Like you've done pageantry, there's an inside sparkle, and there is a need in your community to highlight what you're doing, and it already brings a conversational piece. People are like, well, why do you have a crown on? Why do you have a sash on? What does this do? And they're like, oh, you're doing real shit. Like you're not just this like,
Yeah,
fancy,
facade,
prancy, like, oh, she's here for, the wrong reasons. And that's how I've worked with my charities for over like decades now, and doing just everything that I do that's helping, the side of the girls, because the young girls also, they reach out all the time like, would you help mentor me? Would you do some lessons with me? And so my husband even does interview lessons. I mean, he's a big CO guy, and he takes the time because he's like, this is what's important. Being able to get on a stage, not being scared to have a conversation, and getting things done. He interviewed a girl when he was working for Google. He was a CEO of Google, he was an executive at Google. And a girl came in for a job, and on her resume she said she was a former Miss USA California or something like that. I don't remember what title it was. And he said, I know you're a hard worker. And he's like, just to get to that level, he's like, because I've seen my wife, and she never did USA, didn't even, that was never on my plate. It was already past the age point in that part of my life. But he's like, I wanted to hear more from her because I knew how hard it was to get here.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because you manage a million things, especially being a mom and married and doing pageantry. Like, holy moly, I ended up with like so many Sky Miles because I was like traveling. Like they're like, oh, you have 4 free suitcases now, Miss Pennington. Because I was traveling so much to do what I wanted to do.
You know what I think, to your point about like starting as an adult, I think all 3 of us, with things we've started as adults, if you're starting something, if you're like in your late 20s, your 30s, like you're not doing it unless you're fucking doing it.
Exactly.
Like it's not like, oh, I'm a kid, I'm interested, or maybe like the other kids are doing it, this seems cool. Like you're in it, and you're pursuing it like wholeheartedly because you didn't like get to a certain point or a certain age to like half-ass whatever it is that you're interested in.
No, the time is of the essence, and like there's not like all these times to mess up again.
Yeah.
It's like you said, you're in it. So everything I do, I try to do like 110%. I'm like, I know both you do. It's just because there isn't, for me personally, we don't get another rehearsal.
Yeah.
Like this is it.
And time's a luxury when you have a family and like a demanding job, and like you're helping out family members, whether it's like going to your kids' games or supporting your husband's endeavors. Like there's other shit that's got to get done.
100%. And I think too, like I forget, like, as a young person, I didn't realize how expensive your time is. Is the most expensive thing you hold. And like I really watched as my father passed away, like as he became sick, I was like, holy moly, like this is it. Like you got to get it all done. And really delicate, like what is important to you and what you do each day. Like when you wake up, you're like, if you answered every single message for somebody, like your day would be gone, right? So it's really just figuring out what is the main factor and kind of your totem pole.
And this is like Dr. Tara. I don't know if you watched her interview.
I just met her though. I loved her.
But she literally said she was saying that she has somebody that cleans her house, and what she said was to quote, and I'm gonna screw up the second part, but she was like, I can't do X, Y, or Z if I'm scrubbing toilets. And she's like, it's not like, oh, I'm this super important person, like I need someone to clean my house. It's more like, keep the main thing, take care of the other stuff that's important, and then the things you can delegate, like without worrying about if someone's going to do it as effectively as you, then you can just pass it along.
100%. There's different
time is money.
And like you just want to enjoy your time before it's too late, because you don't know what tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
What I love about what you do though is, and for anybody, the largest and most valuable gift that we could ever give somebody is giving them whatever it is, our time, our energy, our mentorship, coaching, feedback. I mean, all of it. That's the gift that we can give to people. And the fact that you take the time to mentor younger women or help style them or dress them. I know the fashion show you did, you were raising money. What is a cause that you believe super strongly about that you're focusing on and you want to make mention of?
Yeah, so I would say probably a decade plus, I've worked with homelessness, whether it be in New York, Las Vegas or New Jersey. And the reason is because my mother was homeless when she immigrated to the States. She ended up finding herself in a predicament where just where it was. Like she ended up, you know, in a space where she had nobody, didn't speak the language, and was like, you know, who thought this could happen to somebody like this? So people think, you know, it's somebody who does drugs or drinks or whatever, but like homelessness is like maybe tomorrow, like you just don't have your check in time to pay the rent, and your landlord says you got to go, and whether it's couch surfing or sleeping in your car or, you know, just the bills aren't getting paid and whatnot. And that's why I really try to, I guess, more like teach and just make knowledge to everybody is like homelessness is an array of different things, right? So I've been fortunate enough to sit on the board for HABCOR, which permanently houses the homelessness in Monmouth and in Ocean County. So we're not just a shelter, we're not just a place to get a meal, we are physically putting you in a home and we're your landlords. We also have 2 boarding houses for people who cannot live on their loan if there happen to be a disability, they're veterans, whatever it may be that they're dealing with, we have spaces and places for them as well. So when I met this woman, Mart, I think you met her at our event, and she was telling me what HABCOR did, I just fell in love immediately because I've worked with Covenant House for many, many moons. I've sat on both boards for New York and New Jersey. And I felt that if we could stop homelessness at a young age before they transition to adult homelessness is where it's harder to stop it.
Right.
So I've been doing that. I've done multiple sleep outs where we sleep on the street, we raise money, millions of dollars. It's so passionate to me because I've actually seen the success rate. So it's like 96% of Covenant House children transition out of homelessness through these programs.
Amazing.
And our adult families or, you know, single families or moms, they are also doing such a great job in HABCOR because we're managing them and helping them. You know, your rent's going to get paid, your bills are going to get paid, this is how we're going to do it, you have to go to work. And having the structure, just sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. You know, if you weren't taught, how would you know? So
And giving them the opportunity to focus on other things instead of how they're going to get the next dollar.
Like, if you don't know how to like balance a checkbook, what are you going to do? You know, if you don't know how to get a cell phone. So a lot of the things I worked with the children in New York, which like blew my mind, was they didn't even know how to get a Metro card to get on the subway.
Wow.
They'd never actually left the area where they've been in. So, you know, it's just generational things. I was like, we have to stop and help and educate and take the time. And I felt if I did this, the improvement level just of my time getting in the trench, whether you can write a check or you have to get in the trenches, it's like, I want to do both. So how can I raise money? How can I make it aware? But how can we, because homelessness doesn't just affect, you know, New Jersey, it doesn't just affect New York, it is worldwide. And I saw that a lot living abroad as well. I mean, like, it struggles with every place. And especially during COVID, I was like, this was, I think was my biggest fundraiser I'd ever done for Covenant House because it, unfortunately, many children lost an adult to COVID and that put them in the foster care system.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, because there wasn't an aunt or an uncle or grandparent, they didn't have a structure, they didn't have family. And nowadays, most people move away from family, don't have that built-in system. And I was like, what can I do personally? Because I do not want to see children in homelessness. My sister actually adopted 2 children out of that situation, and that's another great way to stop homelessness is getting kids out of the foster care system. But it's really passionate to me because if you see someone on the street, people make a judgment already. You don't want to like make eye contact. You're like, oh, they must be doing something. People step over. I'm like, that is a human. You're right. We can't fix this problem today, but it can start somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so passionate. So if anybody ever wants to get involved, you get their hands, you know, in the trenches, help wrap Christmas gifts for our children. You know, we are doing so many little things that make such a big impact.
Oh
Awesome,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, we'll definitely get involved. I know, obviously we had this beautiful brunch this past weekend, which was so nice as well. As a mother, as a career woman, what do you think that you're most proud of as far as leaving a legacy?
And I just really instilled that in him because I'm like, my dad did that for me. He was like, just keep doing what you love. Like, he was always the first person in my basketball games. I'm so sad.
You know, I'll start crying right now if I even start talking about my daughter because I'm the same way. Like when you see them in their human form and their behavior of this person that they've become, because, you know, I think as moms, we just doubt everything, right?